nerdy. Welcome everyone to the late game episode 26. My name is Lycan, and with me I have Rotterdam, Richard Lewis, and Pengwin. Today we have a pretty exciting show coming up for you. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about the Gfinity Spring Masters #2. We're going to talk about the KeSPA Cup, Hero and Dark putting on some excellent games. We'll talk DreamHack, WCS Premier, Spinu, and MTG possibly acquiring or being acquired by ESL. But first, before we get into that, Rotterdam, haven't had you on in a while. Glad to have you back. How you been?
Busy, a little rocky, because I've been in Europe for a while now, a little longer than I planned to be. But I'm actually kind of enjoying myself, so it's not all that bad as long as it ends well. And yeah, just doing my thing, streaming a lot, playing a lot, following the scene, having some fun on the side. You know what it is.
So there's a question, we'll go ahead and ask it now. Your brother in the Roddycopter.
Yeah.
Is that like a thing that your brother grew up doing to you as a kid, or?
No, not at all. I think like he sort of knows what I do, but he never really actually was part of anything I've ever done, nor does he watch it. So I'm trying to explain him since I've been in here now for 5-6 weeks a little bit with the streaming element and stuff. Yesterday he was just having a little too much fun, and he suddenly realized that what his little brother does is quite fun, and then obviously he had to show to the world who's the boss. And I've always said, when I grow up I'll beat him, but it turned out that my brother, I'm 6'2", but my brother is 6'4" and a state champion boxer, so it's been a little hard catching up, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Richard, how you been, man?
Pretty good. Busy, lots of work coming at the moment. I'm still trying to balance that, what's the word? That sort of walk that tightrope.
Between reporting and hosting and all that.
Yeah, being everyone's least favorite journalist and working for the companies that I'm writing about. So yeah, it's been interesting, but been to some cool events lately and got to hang out with Rotterdam just recently in London, which was that's a high point. And obviously off to DreamHack. They fly out tomorrow morning. So
2 events in a row. That's crazy. When just last year, I think we only had you at for StarCraft anyway at IEM. Was it?
Well, yeah. I don't know if it's been officially announced anywhere, but I'm booked for the whole DreamHack tour.
Nice. Congratulations.
So the point, I think what they want to do is they want to have me host StarCraft and CS:GO where possible. So lots of extra work. Obviously, StarCraft isn't at as many stops on the DreamHack tour this time, but yeah. So I'm going to be there. I've already agreed. I did Bucharest. Summer's booked. London, I think, is definitely in there. I think Valencia will be as well. Cluj. So I mean, I think I'm doing the whole shebang.
So I have too much passion to know the answer to this question, but is CS:GO at this DreamHack?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm doing both. They were like, we thought it'd be really cool to have you do the StarCraft and do the CS:GO. So
nice.
I fly out tomorrow. I dread to think what the production meeting's going to be like. It's going to be like, StarCraft and then CS:GO. So it probably is going to be a lot of work for me, double the prep work. But I do enjoy being involved in StarCraft. I still think it's the best community I've ever done sort of anything for. So.
Nice. One real quick question about the 2 jobs. Does CS:GO? I haven't watched a lot of CS:GO productions. Do they do an analysis desk the way that StarCraft does?
Yeah, I would even go so far as to say that it does owe a huge debt in a lot of ways to kind of what StarCraft normalized in terms of broadcasting. I think that was the first esport that really brought a kind of almost like an ESPN Sports Center feel to esports back in 2010. They were very ahead of the curve, I think. And the analysis desk that you get in CS:GO, it's kind of like a StarCraft one, but usually a little bit more fun because it has to be, because Thorin's on all of them. So you can't be too serious.
Wait, so is the lack of seriousness to counter the Thorin?
No. The lack of seriousness definitely emanates from Thorin. I think if you watched what he did at Face It, he even talked about one of the players having such big hands he could act as somebody that draws semen from a horse for the purposes of artificial insemination. There's a clip out there of him saying this, and it's that's on an analysis desk. I don't think you quite get that in StarCraft. I don't think.
No,
I don't think Blizzard I don't think Blizzard will like that too much.
No, not at all. Penguin, how you doing, buddy?
Pretty good, thanks.
Good, good. What have you been up to?
Mostly just practicing for DreamHack, streaming quite a bit, and yeah, just making sure that everybody is good to go for DreamHack. I'm working on some management stuff, just pretty much standard stuff in my end.
So, I have a question for you. I've been
Sure.
hearing a lot about Korean fried chicken. You spent some time recently in Korea. Is Korean fried chicken like anything to write home about? Is it just
Korean
fried chicken?
is like a life-changing experience, man. Like Korean fried chicken, you go there, like you order it in, it arrives, and you expect it to be food. Like you expect it to be like pretty good food. But what ends up happening is that for the duration of your trip to Korea, Korean fried chicken just kind of becomes a way of life. And yeah, and I had way too much fried chicken for my own good.
So there's a town, one town over. It takes a couple minutes to get there, called Ellicott City in Maryland, and it is a predominantly Korean. Well, not a predominant, but they have a very large Korean culture, and I didn't really appreciate that until I got into esports and people started taking me to like the barbecue and all that. And I just found out I was watching the KeSPA Cup, and they had Korean fried chicken delivered, and I looked up and they have a Korean place, so I need to go. If you're saying it's this good, I think I need to make a trip there.
Oh yeah, you definitely have to.
I definitely will. Anyway, that's enough friendly banter. Time to talk about drama. Just kidding. We're actually going to talk about esports. First off, we're going to kick it off with Gfinity. Before we get into the esports side of things, Richard, do you have some time to sit with Paul at all while you're there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, me and Paul, we spent quite a lot of time talking about obviously the pre-show, and then afterwards, we had a few beers. He snuck away on the final night. When we went over to Face It, we wanted to catch the end of the Face It CSGO event, which was also happening in London at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It was delayed because they were subject to DDoS attacks, so we thought we'd try and fold in the two parties, which we didn't do with great success. And Red Eye snuck away to obviously getting old and couldn't handle his medicine. So a little bit disappointed. But yeah, I mean, I think I worked at Gfinity in the pre-Paul era, and I've now done a Gfinity under Paul, and you can see the difference in quality and organization already.
Good. Good.
It was a much better event. I think anyone who watched the first Gfinity StarCraft Masters compared to this one, I think anyone who watched it will be able to see the difference in terms of production quality.
Yeah, I definitely did, and I think that I expected nothing but good things from Paul, and I'm excited to see what Gfinity is going to look like, 3 months from now, let alone a year from now. But Rotterdam, what did you think of the games overall at Gfinity?
We had quite a few good series. It was like most of the series were either very fun to watch or they were very one-sided. There wasn't really a whole lot in between. But yeah, I think we had quite a few good series. The final, it was a ZVZ final, so it was obviously not. You need to get really lucky to get an amazing ZVZ final, and I don't think we got that. But I think overall we had a couple of good series, and I think it was very entertaining to watch.
From the Protoss side, looking at SOS getting 3-0'd by Hydra, was that expected to you? Did you not expect that?
Not at all. That was actually like on paper that looked like an amazing series, and that looked like a series that you just hope it goes 3-2 either way, and you just hope for a bunch of amazing games. But it wasn't just that it was extremely one-sided. It was also SOS just played kind of bad. Like he played a little bit uninspiring, silly builds. Just nothing really went his way. Hydra looked rock solid though. Like PvZ is often right. Like a Protoss is trying to force errors upon a Zerg. That's kind of like the story of the matchup most of the time. But yeah, like SOS was not even close to forcing Hydra into any mistake. So no, that was a surprise, and it was also a disappointing series. Like that was one of the series where I expected a lot more from.
Looking at SOS's play, we haven't seen him really rise through GSL lately. He hasn't been giving us these performances that we saw a lot of back in 2014. Do you think that this is just is it the map pool? Is it the meta? What is causing him to play not as well as he had been before?
I'm actually not exactly sure. Like it was really weird, right? Because last year SOS was relatively close to qualifying for BlizzCon. I think there was the last GSL in which he dropped out before he should have, if he actually wanted to get enough points immediately. But he was still able to just go to the final DreamHack event, I think, of the year, like the last WCS event, And if he would have just made top 16, which, you know, as well as in not even top shape, but just reasonable shape, he would have been able to get top 16, get those points, and qualify for BlizzCon. But he just didn't go. I feel like if I was SOS, right, and I would have his bank account, then even if my team doesn't want to send me, I'd buy my own ticket to Sweden and I'll get top 16 at the event. I'll qualify for BlizzCon. You get 5K anyway, and maybe so much more. But he didn't even want to do that. He was just like, no, I'm going to take a break. And yeah, ever since he missed out on BlizzCon last year, but maybe even throughout the entire 2014, it's not really like the invincible SOS from 2013 Pro League, from 2013 BlizzCon. It's been a long time since I think he's been absolutely on top of his game.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm curious to see what we're going to see from SOS. You know, if he's taking this break, if he's going to kind of get refreshed and come back and do some great things. But I guess we'll see. Another guy I want to talk about is Jaedong, Pengwin. Jaedong, he makes it to the semifinals, doesn't make it to the finals, but he also didn't get 3-0'd. It was 2-3 to Hydra. What did you think of Jaedong's performance overall?
I think like this is a really important result for Jaedong, right? Because he's been kind of not really doing much. He took a really long break, and then when he did come back, like last Gfinity, he didn't look particularly strong. And just overall, since his sort of comeback, he hasn't really looked that great. And now qualifying for WCS Premier is nice, but it's not really like something that you can reference as being like, oh man, this is an amazing feat for Jaedong.
Mm-hmm.
But this was a really good run for him, and this is one where he looked really solid as well. Like going through, he looked like he was showing some really strong ZVZ the whole way through. Like beating True is really impressive. Like True is really solid in ZVZ. And then even taking out Patience, like Patience has been having a little bit of trouble lately, but Patience is still a really good player. And then like Hydra as well. Like, Hydra is just an insanely good player overall. And taking him to 5 games, just it kind of shows to me that Jaedong definitely still has what it takes to play with the best. And he's going to DreamHack, right? Let me just double check that. Okay, doesn't look like he's going to DreamHack, but I hope he goes to a couple more tournaments soon, because I feel like he needs like another result like this to kind of build off of.
Right. What do you think about WCS and Jaedong? Do you see him going far?
It kinda, to me, always depends a lot on groups. And Jaedong's group going into this is 3 Protosses, and it's Gung Fu Banda, Elfie, and Haas. So, like, Jaedong is definitely the favorite against each of those, I would say, but at the same time, like, he's not got the greatest history against people like Elfie and Haas who play really, really weird, especially against Haas in particular. And even Gung Fu Banda's a really good player, so he could struggle there.
Right.
But hopefully he's able to make it out.
Okay. Yeah, so overall, I think Gfinity was an excellent tournament. There were a lot of good games, a lot of new faces too, as far as the casters go. Richard, you worked with these guys, some of them new faces.
Yep.
What did you think of the guys that we don't really see too often?
It's interesting actually. I just wrote an article about this for CS:GO. Like, there seems to be this kind of there's always backlash against new commentary talent, you know, and in any game. And I've always found it really perplexing. Like, I think if someone, in it's apparent they have no redeeming features whatsoever, like as a commentator, yeah, give them some shit, you know, like it's never going to work for them. They probably just need some tough love. But I think most of those people get weeded out long before you see them doing an event of the stature of Gfinity or above, right? So it's interesting, like nobody really seems to do a lot to kind of try and close the gaps between the tier 2 casters and the tier 1 casters. We've had some massive shrinkage in the tier 1 casting bracket because obviously they've all gone off to fucking Passion Stone or whatever is paying that, you know, this particular month, and that's fine if you're a career commentator, and especially if you're play-by-play. I don't think you need in-depth game knowledge, particularly. I mean, obviously that's an exception for StarCraft, but to do some of the other games, you know, I think that's absolutely fine. No problems with that whatsoever. But I don't think companies are doing enough to kind of give the tier 2 casters that opportunity to kind of shine and put them across to the community in a way that they can say, okay, well, you know, this guy isn't an Artosis, for example, but there are things about him to like. The good thing I would say about what Gfinity did this weekend was you had guys like Rotterdam, you know, who is a tier 1 caster, you know, doing stuff alongside guys like Maddles, who I think, with the best will in the world, even if Maddles was here, he wouldn't mind me saying he's not a tier 1 caster. And I think, you know, having that experience of working alongside people, having the opportunity to be presented to a broader audience, I think that's important. That's all part of the improvement process.
Right.
You know, no one goes in at the top, you know, and I think there's going to be more opportunities for those guys because, you know, people will come back for Legacy of the Void, no doubt about it. But if these guys can get a run of tournaments under the belt before that happens, you know, maybe they're better positioned to get the work rather than the people that come back for the easy paycheck. So I hope people do support them more. I thought they did very well. I thought the standard of casting, I mean, from what I can tell anyway, I mean, they may as well be speaking fucking Hebrew. It all zooms over my head. But, you know, I certainly thought there was lots to like, despite maybe some people having some reservations about the lineup on paper. And, of course, Rotterdam and Kaldor, you know, they did the finals, I think, on each day. And you know, it was a tight-knit crew. I thought it was really good.
Awesome. Pengwin, what did you think of the casting?
Honestly, mostly because of Soxry's whereabouts stream-wise, I guess. I watched Base Trade TV for the most part because I really like Base Trade TV, and also because Kaldor was doing a lot of casting on the mainstream, and my personal preference is that I don't really enjoy Kaldor's casting. So yeah, I just kind of stuck to Base Trade for the most part. I was really happy that Base Trade got to do a community stream, and I tuned into a couple of the casts. I thought Harston did a pretty good job on the mainstream when he was casting, especially because he hasn't really done that many events, so he provided a lot of really good insight as well, because obviously he's a very solid pro player as well. And overall, like, the people that were there were able to provide quite a bit of analytical insight, which is nice. Like, people like the Muslim, people like Roddy, people like Harston are all like pretty solid at the game, and they're able to provide some good insight into what's happening. So I think the setup was pretty good. I didn't get to watch that much of the actual execution because, like I said, I was watching Soxry's games, and then when Soxry lost, I just kind of got sad and didn't watch the rest. So I watched like Jaedong, but I just kind of tuned out then. So from what I saw, it was pretty solid though, for sure.
All right. Final thought on Gfinity and the casting and all that stuff, Roddy. You worked with these guys. You got to sit down actually at the desk, analyze and shoutcast alongside them. What'd you think overall of the experience and the people you worked with?
I really like this event. Like, it's the first time I did Gfinity, and obviously, you know, most of the time people come back and they always say like, "Oh, that was a great event," because they want to get rehired. But this was actually, like, for me, it was a super chill event to work. Like, Paul was ridiculously nice to us. I guess he knows that sometimes, you know, during IEM we had slavery days, or you know, as any of the other events, and it's all worth it anyway, because all those events are a blast to work. But this was so relaxing. You show up, we have a little chit chat with the boys in the backstage room. We do 1 or 2 rehearsals, then I cast 1 or 2 series, and then I'm off for like 2 hours and I have 1 more series. So it was extremely relaxing to work with me, and I must say the guys behind the scene, they were all very nice of Gfinity. I definitely think you could see that a couple of them were a little bit inexperienced with a thing or two, but overall it was a really good crew to work with. And when it comes to like the other casters, I think all those boys did a pretty damn good job, but I do think that it's like it's hard to kind of put it into words without like trying to sound like a douchebag or something, but in a weird way it feels like sometimes like the lesser known casters, they really look up to the guys that are more well known, so they're very afraid to correct them, or they're very afraid to even start like the smallest argument with them. And I have never, like, you know, if you look at the history of casting I've done, I think right now with Nate, but even back in the days with Bitter, you know, I'm never afraid of an argument. I think, like, if you disagree with something, then just disagree with it, you know. And if there's one thing I hate is when one call is clearly wrong, and then the other guy is, like, trying to go along with it. So I do think, but, you know, that's just something that comes with experience, I guess. But I enjoyed meeting Medals. I enjoyed casting with him. I enjoyed meeting Jarazar as well, first time since many years again. And I think Jarazar is a very well-spoken, funny dude. You could hear that, you know, they don't cast all the events, that they're definitely out of the loop a tiny bit, but overall, good days, I'd say.
Good.
And obviously,
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
I want to add as well. I like the best thing about doing anything with Gfinity is when you're doing the analysis desk, and like I say, I've done CS for them and now StarCraft. They basically say they want the analysis desk to be like Top Gear. That's like what they've said. They don't want it to be too serious. They want you to have fun. I mean, at one point I called the Muslim, what was it, Benjamin, when I did the introduction, I called him Benjamin the Muslim Button, the world's oldest StarCraft 2 player and shit, like, you know, and we were just fucking around with each other the entire time. Harstam told a ridiculous story, one of the best stories I've ever heard. I'm not going to ruin it, but you need to get Harstam on the show. Like, it'll go viral if you get him to tell this story. It's fucking hilarious. I've never laughed so much. And, you know, we were able to just, like, literally do whatever we want in the analysis room. Yeah, obviously, there was, like, 5-minute time slots, so we had to do, like, a little bit of analysis. And, yeah, there was some serious parts where we got replays. But it was really refreshing because, as me and Rotterdam talked about over a beer, you know, esports is getting super serious right now. You know, you go into a broadcast and you're worried, like, am I going to say anything that's going to cause a controversy if I make a joke, you know? Mm-hmm. So you're under this tremendous pressure in a live broadcast environment to fill for time, for example, if there's a delay. So, okay, now you've got to fill. So now you need to be entertaining. Maybe you crack a joke. You make the wrong joke at the wrong time and somebody hears it and it blows up on Twitter and then it goes to Blizzard and then Gfinity get a phone call like, what the fuck's going on? And it's a shit show. And that exists in the minds of every person who does casting for full time. It's not something I have to worry about too much because if I get told, and I've had this before, if I get told you can't do an event again, well, all right, fine. I got a day job. I don't give a fuck. I don't need the money. But, you know, for guys who this is their day job, it's a real fear. So to have Gfinity come in and say, look, we got you, have fun, you know, just keep it loose, fast. We want it to be a bit like Top Gear. We don't mind if you go full Clarkson. Just don't hit any of us. You know, it's really nice and relaxing. And I think it shows in the final quality of the show, you know. Sure, there's a time for seriousness, but let's not forget esports is entertainment. It's meant to be fun. We're meant to be having, you know, an enjoyable time while we're doing this.
Absolutely. Okay, I couldn't agree more with that. All right, guys, we're going to move on to the KeSPA Cup. Let's talk about the literal god tasteless, also known as Hero. Incredible stuff. Watching those games. Pengwin. Let's talk about game one, right? Hero versus Dark. It's on Expedition Lost. Dark goes for 3 hatch before a pool. I'm sorry, you know, double hatch. Hero goes 2 base. He goes for a robo, and the robo gets scouted. Not only does the robo get scouted as soon as it gets put down, but with a few Zerglings, Dark was able to see that he was going for Immortals, right? I felt like he had ample time to prepare, and yet Dark didn't have anything to defend. Really, he had a few roaches, and he had some lings, but nothing popped in time for him to really do anything. What would Dark have been going for on that map that he would have seen the robo and seen the Immortals and still not reacted in that time? Or was this just a mistake?
I think it was probably just a mistake. Like, if you scout an Immortal Ling coming as early as he scouted it, and you open 3 hatch before pool, you should have ample time to set yourself up in a defensive position to hold it. But at the same time, like, Expedition Lost is a kind of map where it's very possible to just, like, if you lose sight of the Protoss army, or if you just, like, don't pay attention to it for 10 seconds and it gets into one of those positions, because Expedition Lost has a lot of positions where it's really difficult to engage into. You have to pick an engagement in a really good location. So, like, what ends up happening is that if you can't pick an engagement in one of those open areas, you're stuck in a position where you have to worry about the back rocks going down, you have to worry about all these little chokes, like the one going in towards the natural, and, like, there's just so many chokes that make it hard to actually deal with an Immortal Sentry all in. So I feel like it was probably just a mistake on Dark's part, because really he should be able to hold an Immortal Sentry push off of a 3 hatch 4 pool with scouting it, but I mean, it's one of those builds where it's really, really difficult to hold, you know, so can't fault him too much, I guess.
No, I mean, but he definitely didn't repeat the style. We move on. I believe that it was either Coda or Echo. But it was the next map he moves on to. Rotterdam, I have a question for you. In this game 2, with Hero and Dark, Hero invests into Dark Templars. He makes, I think, 3 or 4 Dark Templars.
Which map was this? Sorry.
It was either Coda or Echo.
Oh, yeah, the Coda game with the warp prisms and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a sick build. I copied it already on Reddit.
So, is that hatch alone worth the Dark Templar tech?
It's not like that he's just getting the hatch, it's that he's pulling him out of position, because the guy is like, oh my god, like, I was worried about War Prism play at my ramp. I was worried about Blink Stalkers. Now suddenly I have to worry about War Prisms too, or about DTs too. So he has to split up his units. He has to take care of units on the right side. The Zerg has to get detection pretty much in all bases because there is still a Prism as well. So he doesn't want to have a big fight and suddenly a War Prism flies a DT to his main. So it's a ridiculously risky build, of course, because if it gets scouted out all along, then detection will be ready in place, and yeah, then it's a pretty big investment. It's not one of these builds that you're going to bust out 3 times in a best of 7, but on that moment, I thought it was freaking brilliant, and the execution worked out really well for Hero.
I feel that was the name of the game for Hero a lot. There were a couple games where Hero had his slip-ups in his macro, but I think Hero made an excellent job of capitalizing on different situations.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Like a little bit of old school MC, right?
Yeah. So one question I do have is, after Hero snipes the hatchery, he gets the Archons. How valuable are those Archons to his army composition? Obviously, they're very strong, they're hard to kill, but what do they provide in that small number?
I mean, like, I kind of have to rewatch the replay to completely like give you a full blown out analysis on how many roaches there are, how many hydras there are, and how good the Archons are in that moment. But it's just that those DTs alone, you know, they're quite squishy in the front, especially because the rest of his army consists of Blink Stalkers, right?
Yep.
So if you have DTs, the DTs will always be in the front, and they will be like the first thing that gets shot at because they will run ahead of the Blink Stalkers and they will just die immediately. So they don't really solve a purpose anymore when the rest of the army consists of Blink Stalkers. So that's why it makes a lot more sense to get them into Archons. And Archons are actually quite easy to micro, despite the fact that they're like pretty fat. They can soak up a lot of damage and then you can just send them back to the army. And they fight on relatively the same range as Blink Stalkers. Obviously a little bit ahead of it, but it's better than having them having DT stand by themselves and just literally be the first thing that's going to get picked off within 0.1 seconds.
Yeah. So what do you think of, we have the KeSPA Cup, right? We have the KeSPA Cup. It doesn't offer that preparation that GSL and these other events do when you know who your opponent's going to be before you get there. So you have to make those on-the-fly decisions of how you're going to play and what you can remember from these individuals. And I believe, again, that really highlights Hero's ability to adapt on the spot to these situations. Would you say that Hero, after this performance, is one of the best, if not the best, Protoss at the moment?
I mean, absolutely, he's one of the best Protoss players in the world. Otherwise, you cannot win KeSPA Cup. Like, the thing is, it's always hard to throw terms around like that unless somebody is like extremely dominant. You know, like nobody's gonna argue whether or not Life is the best Zerg in the world after what he's done. You know, for the last 18 months. Of course, he won't be the best Zerg in the world every single day, but overall, he is the best Zerg. As Protoss, you got a couple of guys who are just amazing and they're really close to each other. Like, I think Hero and Parting are extremely close to each other. A lot of people really love Stats. I'm still not like a real believer if he's truly that good. But, you know, Stats, Deer, Rain, they're all so freaking good. But yeah, I think Hero and Parting right now, those are the two heaviest hitters.
Yeah, absolutely. Pengwin, Dark, his performance. What do you think are his strengths just overall as a Zerg?
First of all, like, this is a really important performance for him as a player because he hasn't really been as good in the individual leagues as he has been in Pro League so far. So, like, this pretty much, as far as individual leagues go, it's a bit of a breakout performance for him, so it's really important for him. As far as his strengths as a Zerg, I feel like he's definitely one of those guys who's really, really solid at preparation. He's really good at, he has his own style as well, which is pretty hard to prepare against. Like, he's the kind of guy who can definitely throw out some new styles or some a little bit wonky styles that you don't really see as often. For example, like a good example of that would be the Roach Hydra or the Roach Baneling Corruptor style that he was using in ZVT quite a bit. Like, that's something that he kind of pioneered, and it hasn't really caught on that much outside of his play, but he still uses it a lot and to very good effect. And he's the kind of guy who does throw out stuff like that, and it's very difficult to really know what he's going to go for as from an opponent's perspective. So, like, he's a very good all-around player as well, and I think that just kind of shined through here. Like, he's had some very, very rough losses in GSL and SSL. So this time around, like, he had some tough series. Like, it went down to the wire against Fantasy, but all told, like, he 3-0'd Life. Like, that's pretty good as far as a sign of being one of the top players for sure, especially taking Hero to Game 7 as well.
Absolutely. So I think I completely agree with you that it was an excellent performance from both players, and that's one thing I really liked is that it wasn't a shutout. You know, Hero didn't just completely take out Dark without any fight. Dark put up a damn good fight, and I'm really happy to see the matches that we got to see. But with that, we're going to move into DreamHack. And before we talk Turkey on DreamHack tours, Richard Lewis, right? So you've made it known yourself. You're not a big StarCraft player.
No, definitely not. No.
So when you're coming into these events, obviously you need to know a thing or two before you get to throw down some knowledge and guide the discussion. So how you're doing more of these events? How are you preparing for each of these events?
So what I do is I call Apollo, and I say, "Tell me what to say." No, I'm kidding. Basically, what I do is, I mean, look, I don't think you need to have in-depth game knowledge to be able to, look at a person's recent run of results and, dictate who a favorite is, or look at a head-to-head record and say, I think this guy should take it, right? But actually, one of the advantages about sort of coming in as this blank slate is that I'm asking questions that, if you're a novice viewer at home or even someone who's really experienced, I'm asking questions, for the purposes of my own knowledge that are going to bring the best out of the people on the analysis desk. Mm-hmm. So, if I say to somebody, this head-to-head matchup, this guy's won 3 times out of the last 3 games, so he's going to win again, right? And then, I don't know, Rotterdam might turn around and say, well, actually, you're wrong, Richard, because he hasn't played, he hasn't practiced on this particular patch, whereas, this other player's beaten this guy, and this guy. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. So it's like my lack of knowledge is enabling, the person I'm asking to present stuff into the public domain for the purposes of discussion. So I do have to do way more prep work for StarCraft than I, would do for any other game. But ultimately, I just treat it like you would any other sport, like, I don't know anything. Well, okay, that's a bad example. I was going to say baseball, but let's say, I name a sport that I don't watch. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure you could give me a week and I could sit down and, okay, this team have won here, here, and here. And you could talk about it and make some accurate predictions and pull some little bits of trivia out there. It's good. I actually prefer doing the StarCraft desks because they go in as a complete blank slate. And yep. I just ask, and I don't bluff. I don't blag. I mean, that's important. You get a lot of people who pretend to be experts in esports, right? Like, oh, well, what I think is this. And you're like, yeah, you're talking shit, mate. Like, you haven't got a fucking clue. You know what I mean? But, I don't do that with StarCraft because I think it would be horrifically apparent that I didn't know what I was talking about. So, I go in. The fans appreciate that, I think, that I'm not trying to blag, not trying to bluff. And we all have a good time and we have a laugh. We make a little bit of fun of me not knowing. Yeah. I like to say, I make no bones about it. I haven't played a single game of Heart of the Swarm, not one. Okay. So, but I don't think that impedes my ability as a host.
I think it was going really well, Gfinity. I'm not saying that because you're sitting here on the call, because I couldn't really care less whether or not you appreciate my setup.
Yeah, I know that, dude.
But I actually think it went really well, and even the boys, when you were not around, we were like talking with each other. We're like, man, Richard did a really good job. Like, it's much more about the vibe that you give off to the audience, and like if they see a bunch of guys having fun, as long as we provide some expert quote unquote analysis every now and then, everybody's having a good time. It's all about not having awkward moments, and you're also not one of these hosts that's totally trying to like dominate a conversation. It's like, hey guys, and then you put the guy in the corner. It's like, yeah, all right, moving on. Like you just throw up a curveball, you made some funny jabs here and there. Like I'm pretty sure that even if I wasn't part of the show and I would have just been watching it, that I think I would have really enjoyed watching it. So I think you did really good.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what I want to do as well. You've got to kind of. The thing I don't like about being a host in a way is because it does put me out the spotlight a little bit. Like when it's CS, I think I prefer to be a pundit. I'd rather talk about the game and give opinions. But when you're a host, you got to hold yourself back and rein yourself in, which I probably found difficult when I first started doing it. But actually, it's about making the people on the desk kind of shine. And you've got a guy in your ear, and he's telling you, right, you need to fill for 5 minutes. So then that's how you express yourself, by asking the right questions, by making the right wisecracks, by creating a narrative or a topic of discussion. And it's really about bringing out the best in the people you're working with. I mean, again, same thing goes. If I didn't have guys like, Rotterdam in an analysis room who could sit down and like, look, if we've talked about StarCraft for 40 minutes and we've still got to fill because of a game delay, fuck it, let's talk about football. Right? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
let's talk about drinking. Let's talk about something else. Let's keep it entertaining for the guys at home, you know. But also let's like make it authentic about who we are as people, rather than this super serious fake bullshit. And I don't think of myself as a host. I still think the best host in the game is Red Eye. I think he's if you want a BlizzCon guy or anything like that, that's the guy you would go to. But I think for the broadcasts like a DreamHack or a Gfinity, where they're aiming to be a bit more fun and loose, I think, I can fit into that environment.
That's a great description. I mean, that's absolutely what we'd like to see from a host. And I definitely agree with Rotterdam that, your hosting was awesome. It was great to see you, and I'm glad we're going to see you more. Before we have to get rid of Pengwin, though, by get rid of, I mean he has stuff to do. Let's talk about DreamHack, Pengwin. I want your thoughts. This is
Sure.
I heard you're gonna win it, Pengwin.
Oh yeah, man! I'm so solid right now. I'm actually every single barcode Zerg that's not identified on SC2S in GM.
So let's pretend that you're not going to win the tournament, okay?
All right.
Looking at it, we say this so often, but really, this is a stacked DreamHack. There's a lot of great names that are going to be there. What are your thoughts on? Do you have like a who's going to take it or who might take it, like a top 3?
Well, like the obvious favorite going in has to be Parting. A lot of the top Koreans are missing from the lineup. There's a lot of really big names that Parting could still lose to.
Mm-hmm.
So people like Fantasy's been playing really well lately. It's going to be very interesting to see how he does. He just had a great showing in KeSPA Cup, even if he did go out in the round of 8.
Yep.
Rain is also looking better again. Like he was in a pretty rough slump for a while, but he's looking pretty solid. He forwarded his GSL group, so I'm confident that Rain's going to have a good showing as well. Just like looking at all these Koreans, like Hydra, second place WCS, second place Gfinity, second place other Gfinity. Like Hydra's definitely up there as one of the favorites. Really, if you just look at these Koreans, there's a lot of really good talent in here. And there's a couple people who I think are going to be really disappointing. I think Marine King is going to be pretty disappointing, to be completely honest. He doesn't practice very much StarCraft 2. I can say that after living in the house for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like MC is not really on form either, but he's the kind of guy who just comes out of nowhere and wins stuff, so it's kind of hard to tell how he's going to do. And other than that, there's a pretty solid lineup of foreigners in here as well. Like, there's a lot of good foreign talent here. Huck's doing pretty okay. Lilbao, Harstem, Welmu, Bunny, Marine Lord. Marine Lord is still, in my opinion, like one of the most underrated European players, and I hope he can make it happen in front of a home crowd. That would be really sick for him to have a really nice run. And there's just so much talent in this lineup. I think it's going to be a really, really interesting tournament. Also, the fact that like it's good Koreans, but not necessarily your innovations and your Mars and your lives. I think we have the opportunity to see a lot of foreigners upsetting Koreans as well, which I think adds a lot to the storyline aspect of a tournament too. So I think overall this should be a really, really fun tournament. And favorite to take it, probably going to be Parting. If I had to pick another couple people, probably Fantasy and Hydra's.
If you had to pick a foreigner.
Runners up. If I had to pick a foreigner, Bunny's looking really good right now, but I don't know. I'm gonna go with Marine Lord.
Okay. All right. I'm going with Bunny, but we'll see. We'll see how Marine Lord can do. All right. Well, we'll continue our discussion of DreamHack in a moment. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll get Roddy's thoughts. We'll get Richard's thoughts. We're going to let Pengwin go. Pengwin, where can people find you? What's going on in your world?
You can follow me on Twitter at MYIPenguin. Other than that, I've also been streaming a lot. My stream is Penguin_SC. And yeah, I'm going to be playing in DreamHack. It would be a miracle if I made it past Group Stage 2, so cheer for me. Yeah, I mean, otherwise, yeah, just cheer for my insanity, guys.
You're going to get Cyril right now, right?
Guys. Yeah, I'm picking him up at the train station.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, thanks for coming by, and we'll definitely have you on again. Everyone, check out Pengwin. You can follow him. His Twitter's right there. We'll probably leave it up because I'll probably adjust the thing, but that's his Twitter right there. So with that, we're going to go to a quick break. Stick around. We'll talk to you guys soon.